science fans, and welcome to SHE-ensya's Corner. Here, we kick back, relax, and talk about science events that are exciting, scary, or fun in the life of your resident Filipina scientist. It's March 20, science fans. I am Shauna Camille Vincifruz Abeledo, and welcome to episode 17 of SHE-ensya's Corner. So this week in quarantine, we received news that the oceans will turn evil someday? And also, since new strains of the COVID-19 virus keeps popping up, there seems to be an alternative strategy for destroying them. Finally, 2 new books came out that tries to answer the question, what is life? The ocean. Beautiful, mysterious, and full of life. The world's oceans are vast repositories of gases, including the ozone-depleting chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs. Our oceans absorb CFCs from the atmosphere and draw them down to the deep, where they can remain sequestered for centuries and more. Marine CFCs have long been used to study ocean currents, but it was believed that their impacts to the atmosphere was negligible. However, new evidence seems to suggest otherwise, particularly about CFC-11. In a study published just this week, the MIT team reports that the global ocean will reverse its longtime role as a sink for the potent ozone-depleting chemical. The researchers project that by 2075, the oceans will emit more CFC-11 than it absorbs. And with man-made climate change, this can actually occur 10 years earlier. Science fact. CFC-11 is a chlorofluorocarbon that was commonly used to make refrigerants and insulating foams. When emitted into the atmosphere, the chemical sets off a chain reaction that ultimately destroys the ozone layer, the layer of the atmosphere that protects us from harmful ultraviolet radiation. Since 2010, the production and use of CFC-11 has been phased out worldwide under the Montreal Protocol, a global treaty that aims to restore and protect the ozone layer. Since its phase-out, the levels of CFC-11 in the atmosphere has been continuously declining, and it is approximated that 5 to 10% of all man-made CFC-11 has been absorbed by the oceans. But as concentrations of CFC-11 continue to fall in the atmosphere, it is predicted that CFC-11 will oversaturate the ocean, pushing it to become a source rather than a sink.
No, God!
This new information, although scary, may help scientists and policymakers create ways to address this problem in the future. And it also serves as a loud and obvious call for us to slow down our consumption of natural resources and lessen our carbon footprint so that we can at least mitigate or slow down man-made climate change. In other news, this week in the Philippines, we found out that a Philippine strain of the COVID-19 virus has been discovered. The mutations that make this new strain unique seems to be mostly found on the genes responsible for the spike-like proteins that allow the virus to invade our cells. While the geometry and infection strategy of the virus is generally understood, little is actually known about its physical integrity. But a publication released just this week from the Department of Mechanical Engineering of MIT has shown that the particles of the coronavirus might actually be vulnerable to the frequencies of ultrasound, the one they use in clinics.
What?
Through computer simulations, the team has modeled the virus's mechanical response to vibrations across a range of ultrasound frequencies. They found that vibrations between 25 to 100 megahertz triggered the collapse of the virus particles within a millisecond. And this applies whether the virus is found on air or on liquid.
Deja vu!
Science fact. From previous studies, scientists have mapped out the general structure of the coronavirus, a family of viruses that includes HIV, influenza, and the novel SARS-CoV-2 strain. The structure consists of a smooth shell made up of lipids and proteins that are densely packed with spike-like structures that serve as receptors. With this geometry in mind, the MIT team modeled the virus as a thin elastic shell covered in about 100 elastic spikes. But since the exact mechanical structure of the virus is uncertain, the scientists created a model that accommodated a range of elasticities for the shell and the spikes. Again, please take note that the scientific community still needs to verify the material properties of the spikes because they are so tiny, about 10 nanometers high. Even more unknown is the mechanical nature of the interior of the virus, which is not empty but filled with RNA. So, the modeling that was done had a lot of assumptions. These results are preliminary and based on limited data regarding the virus's physical properties. Nevertheless, these findings are a first hint of an ultrasound-based means of treatment for all types of diseases caused by the coronavirus family, including the new strains of the COVID-19 virus. Now, let's get a little bit philosophical. If everything in the world had to be divided into two bins, one for living things and one for non-living, the task might seem easy. Plants, bacteria, and humans are alive, while smartphones, rocks, and rain are not. But in some cases, the distinction is murky. Where might the coronavirus responsible for the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic belong? Viruses have their own genetic material, so they can evolve. But they can only reproduce if they're within a host. Otherwise, they're static. They also don't consume food, nor do they grow larger in size. So, are viruses living, or are they not? The two new books that have been published tackle the question of what makes something alive. One book is titled What is Life by geneticist Paul Nurse, and the other is titled Life's Edge by science journalist Carl Zimmer. And they explore how scientists have come to understand life and probe some of the entities that push its limits. Asking biologists what it means to be alive is a trigger for a potentially long and awkward conversation. Because as we have been contemplating for centuries the meaning of life, there is actually no universally accepted definition. In the book What is Life, Nurse guides readers through 5 big scientific ideas that he argues help define living things: cells, genes, evolution, life as chemistry, and life as information. He also examines how studying these aspects of life has helped us improve our quality of life, from the creation of advanced medical practices like heart surgery, or even the creation of genetically modified crops. As might be expected from someone who won a Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2001 for discovering how cells control growth and division, Nurse's ideas are rooted in the nuances of life as seen within a cell. So Nurse also highlights the importance of the discovery of the cell, biology's atom, and also the genetic material that allows the cells to work. The book Life's Edge, on the other hand, covers similar territory but goes beyond the inner workings of cells. Zimmer instead assesses the common hallmarks among living things: growth, reproduction, evolution, and metabolism, and looks at how they are in extreme situations. He talks about case studies from the multi-headed slime mold that lacks a brain and yet can make decisions that help it navigate mazes to find food. He talks about how a python, after swallowing a meal, experiences a spike in its metabolism by as much as 45 times. But us humans, after eating a meal, only experiences a 0.5 times spike. What's interesting about Zimmer's book, apart from the amusing stories, is that readers also get introduced to intriguing exceptions to the rules, entities lurking at the edge of life. For example, human red blood cells have no genetic material, so they can't make proteins, nor can they divide into new cells. So, should they be considered alive? The coronavirus is another one of those lurkers. Both Zimmer and Nurse leave unanswered whether viruses should be considered alive. But they also argue that they do straddle the line, living when within a host cell, but non-living otherwise. But I think everyone would agree that viruses, regardless of whether they're living or non-living, have a huge impact on human life. So that's it for SHE-ensya's Corner this week. For more updates about the goings-on at SHE-ensya and your resident Filipina scientist, please follow SHE-ensya on Facebook and on Instagram. Drop by our website also at www.sheensya.com. You can also follow my personal Instagram account at shona.abeledo. I hope you were able to enjoy and learn something from our episode of SHE-ensya's Corner this week. If you did, I hope you can give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please don't hesitate to message me, your resident Filipina scientist, in the comments section below. Thank you very much, and see you around!